Good morning. So today we are going to be going over finding the slope and y-intercept from tables and being able to write a linear equation from a table. So the first thing we need to do in order to find our slope from a table, we need to do our change in y over change in x. Remember, this is the same thing. Change in y over change in x is also the same thing as rise over run. But this time we are doing change in y over change in x from a table. So first I'm going to figure out what my change in y is on this table. So to go from -4 to -2, I'm adding 2. From -2 to 0, I add 2. From 0 to 2, I add 2. So my change in y is 2. So we know it's positive. Okay. To go from -4 to 0, I'm adding 4. 0 to 4 plus 4. And 4 to 8, we add 4. So our change in x is 4. So this simplifies to 1/2. Okay. So our slope is 1/2, positive 1/2, or 0.5, which is the same thing. You can write it either way. Now we need to find our y-intercept. On a graph, we know our y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. But generally, we know our y-intercept is when x is 0, it's our y value. So I'm going to look on the table for where x is 0. So right here, when x is 0, y is -2. So that's my y-intercept. That's where I start. So that means on this equation, I start at -2, and then my constant rate of change goes on from there. So since my b is not 0, this is a non-proportional relationship. Okay? Now, I have my m and I have my b. I have my slope and my y-intercept. Now I can write my equation. Remember, your equation is always in the form of y equals mx plus b. Okay? So I'm going to write my equation and I'm going to substitute in my values. So my slope was 1/2, so I'm going to put 1/2 x minus 2. Since my y-intercept was negative, it's -2. So my equation is y equals 1/2 x minus 2. Now let's take a look at example 2. Okay. So I'm still going to do change in y over change in x. To get from -3.5 to 0, I'm adding 3.5. From 0 to 3.5, you add 3.5. But then you notice there's a change. So I go from 3.5 to 10.5, which is I'm adding 7, right? So it looks like my change in y over change in x is different. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put 3.5 here. And then I'm going to do another change in y over change in x to make sure it's a proportional relationship. So I have 7 here. Okay. To go from -1 to 0, you add 1. 0 to 1, you add 1. So 3.5 over 1. And then 1 to 3 is adding 2. And 3 to 5 is adding 2. So that's 7/2. Well, 7/2 is 3.5. Okay, so that is 3.5. So even if the pattern changes, it's still a constant rate of change because for every 1, you add 3.5. So our slope is positive 3.5. Then I'm looking for my y-intercept. I remember that my y-intercept is when my x is 0 is my y value. Well, when x is 0 here, my y value is 0. So my y-intercept is 0. So with a y-intercept of 0, my relationship is proportional. That means my y varies directly with my x. And if I write my equation, I have y equals 3.5x. There's no need to put plus 0 because you're not adding anything, so you'll leave your proportional relationships in the form of y equals mx. So your equation is y equals 3.5x. Now you will go ahead and complete your assignment.